Hello and welcome to Bible Study with Alice, and today we're on day 8, Esther 8 of our daily Esther reading. We're reading from the ESV translation, but you're more than welcome to join us from a different translation. As you can see, we are on Esther 8. These videos are filmed in real time. Today's date is the 13th of May 25 and it's a Tuesday. You can find the previous 7 chapters in the playlist below. There is a disclaimer as usual, and that is one that these videos are unedited, and also I probably some of my wording, and there's also another disclaimer that I might mispronounce the words in the Bible. It's just so you're aware, and if I have mispronounced something wrong, please leave it the correct pronunciation in the comment box below. I do appreciate that. Let's get started. Esther saved the Jews. On that day, King Ahasuerus gave to Queen Esther the house of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, and Mordecai came before the king, for Esther told what he was to her. And the king took off his signet ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai, and Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. Then Esther spoke again to the king. She fell at his feet and wept and pleaded with him to avert the evil plan of Haman, the Agagite, and the plot he had devised against the Jews. When the king held out the golden scepter to Esther, Esther rose and stood before the king, and she said, "If it please the king, and if I have found favour in his sight, and if the things seem right before the king, I am pleasing in his eye, let an order be written to revoke the letter devised by Haman the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, which he wrote to destroy the Jews Haman the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, which he wrote to destroy the Jews who are in all the province of the king. For how can I bear to see the calamity that is coming to my people? Or how can I bear to see the destruction of the kindred?" Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther and to the Mordecai the Jew, "Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and they have hanged him on the gallows because he intended to lay hands on the Jews. But you may write as you please with regard to the Jews in the name of the king, and seal it with the king's ring, for an edict written in the name of the king, and he sealed with the king's ring, cannot be revoked." The king's scribes were summoned at that time in the 3rd month, which is the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day, and an edict was written according to all that Mordecai commanded concerning the Jews to the satraps and the governors and officials of the province, from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces, to each province in its own script, to each people in its own language, and also to the Jews in their scripts and their language. And he wrote in the king's name, Ahasuerus, and sealed it with the king's signet ring. Then he sent the letters by mountain couriers riding on swift horses that were used to the king's service, bred from the royal studs, saying that the king allowed the Jews who were in every city to gather and defend their lives, to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate any armed forces of any people of provenance that might attack them, children and women included, and to plunder their goods on one day throughout all the province of the king Ahasuerus. On the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, a copy with what was written was to be issued as a decree in every province, being publicly displayed to all people, and the Jews were ready on that day to take vengeance on their enemies. So the courier mounted on their swift horses that for use in the king's service, wrote out hurriedly, urged by the king's command, and a decree was issued in Susa the Citadel. Then Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal robes and blue and white, with great golden crown and robe of fine linen and purple, and the city of Susa shouted and rejoiced. The Jew had light and gladness and joy and honour. And in every province and in every city where the king commanded, and his edict reached, with a gladness, joy among the Jews, a feast and a holiday, and many from the people of the country declared themselves Jews, for fear of the Jews had fallen on them. So that is chapter 18 complete. Chapter 8 complete, even, not 18. Oh my gosh. So again, that's chapter 8 complete. And tomorrow we'll be doing chapter 9. We are coming to the end, if not very close to the end. We've just got 2 more days to go. And then we've completed the book of Esther. So with chapter 8, so let's go back through it. So Esther saves the Jews. So obviously at this point now, it's obviously been established that Esther has obviously explained to King Ahasuerus what had happened, and Haman had obviously been killed on the gallows. He was on the gallows. So on that day, King Ahasuerus gave to the queen the house of Haman. So now Haman has been given to Haman's house has been given to Esther, the enemy of the Jews. And now at this point, Mordecai has came before the king, for Esther had told what he was to her. So at this point now, it's been established that Esther has explained to King Ahasuerus everything, the reason why she's so concerned about the Jews being annihilated and destroyed, and why Mordecai was going to be hung by Haman. So now it's all been explained who Mordecai is to Esther. That obviously Mordecai is Esther's cousin and guardian, because her parents had died when she was a young child and she needed a guardian. So that's now all been explained. So as Esther was speaking to the king, she falls to his feet and weep and plead with him to avert the evil plan of Haman. So she wanted to basically fall to the ground, crying, weeping to the king, because she wanted the king to basically, not allow this plot to take place. So the king held out his golden scepter to Esther, and Esther rose and stood before the king. So he has this golden scepter, and he's like, this is my golden scepter, So basically, as soon as he has it up, everybody kind of, bow to him, sort of thing, kind of rise up to him, sort of thing. Not rise up to him in a bad way, but, stand up before him. So they basically stand up and be in his presence. And now she's saying, if it please the king, and if I have found favour in his sight, and if the thing seem right before the king, I am pleasing in his eye, let an order be written to revoke the letter devised by Haman the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, which he wrote to destroy the Jews who are in all the provinces of the king. So basically now, she's saying, if I am this beautiful person in favour of you, and I'm stood in front of you, and I'm pleasing, and, I am your queen, I am the most important person here, sort of thing, can we now actually just write a letter, write this letter to revoke what's been said and that Haman's going to do to these people? So obviously, he does do that, because obviously, but I say he does that, he does allow that to happen, but he doesn't do it personally. He's like, well, I'm not going to do that myself. Mordecai can do it and use the signet ring. And as soon as the signet ring's been sealed, been used, that then means that that's the final order of the king. What's been said and what's been done now is obviously what the king has said and done. So, you know, the king scribes were summoned at that time in the 3rd month, which is the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day, and an etiquette was written according to all that Mordecai commanded concerning the Jews to be a septorate, and the governors and officials of province of India to Ethiopia. So basically, this letter has now been written up, been done. It's a done thing now. And it's going to go to all of the provinces that is under the king. And it's going to be written in all the languages that you can think of. You know, all these people's languages, it's going to be written so they can obviously have, be able to read it and understand what's been done. And he's now, it's all been complete. And on the 23rd, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, a copy was written, the copy that was written was issued as a decree in every province, being publicly displayed in all peoples, and the Jews were to be ready on that day to take vengeance on their enemies. So the couriers mounted on their swift horses that were used to the king's service rode out hurriedly, as the king commands, and the decree was issued in Susa. So at this point, all these people are going to now know, because it's been issued out to everybody. It's in a public place. Everybody who are Jewish will now see this, and will see that the king has been like, you've been saved, basically. So then, obviously, at the end, in the last section, Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in the royal robes of blue and white, with great golden crown and robes of fine linen and purple, and the city of Susa shouted and rejoiced. The Jews had light and gladness and joys of honour, and in every province and in every city where the king commanded, and his edict reached, there were gladness and joy among the Jews, a feast and a holiday, and many of the peoples from the country declared themselves Jews, for fear of the Jews had fallen on them. So now it's basically like Mordecai's been vindicated. He's been like been received as a good person. He's not a bad person. He never was a bad person, in all fairness. He just didn't bow down to the king when he was supposed to, and Haman didn't appreciate that. But now they're showing that Mordecai is this great person. The king's happy with him. He's in all this royal robes, and all the Jews were happy and joyful, and just so overjoyed now that he's been saved, and that his cousin has saved them. So that is basically the overview of chapter 8. So go back to the start. We do this in the videos. So in the first chapter, King Ahasuerus has a banquet. Queen Vashti refused to do what she was told. She was just like, nah, I'm not having any of it. Chapter 2, at this point now, the King Ahasuerus is looking for a new queen, and he wants all the virgins to come out and do like a beauty contest, so he can then decide which woman's going to be his queen. Now, Esther is actually a Jewish individual, so her Jewish name is Hadassah, and she changed her name to hide her identity and conceal that she is a Jewish individual. Her mum and dad died when she was a young child, and she didn't have anybody to care for her, so her cousin Mordecai has now taken that role as her guardian and is now there to look after her. So obviously at this point he's like, I don't really want to send my cousin to the king, but I'm going to because I've got no choice. But he does that, and King Ahasuerus then decides, actually, I like this woman. She's beautiful. She's everything I want in a woman, in a queen. She's just perfect. So he chooses Esther. Now, Mordecai, obviously, in this chapter, doesn't give away who he is to her. Doesn't give that inkling that he is her cousin guardian. So he just kind of hangs around outside the castle. He doesn't obviously have that right, that privilege to go inside, because obviously if it was discovered at the start, then obviously things probably would be slightly different, but who knows. But in this point, in this chapter, he does obviously hang around outside. But Mordecai discovers a plot, and that plot is to kill King Ahasuerus, and the people who plotted it gets killed themselves. Haman, though, on the other side, doesn't like Mordecai, thinks Mordecai's a bit of an arrogant so-and-so, does not appreciate what he's doing, does not appreciate the king, and doesn't appreciate anything. Discovers that Mordecai is a Jew and just have this sudden detest against Jewish people for whatever reason, just doesn't like Jewish people, and want all Jewish people to be killed. So that's in chapter 3. In chapter 4, he obviously goes to his cousin Esther and explains to Esther what's going on, that Haman basically wants Mordecai dead, wants all Jewish people dead, just doesn't like Jewish people. She's obviously not happy because she's like, well, I'm Jewish, that means I'm going to be killed. So Mordecai then says to Esther, can you go to King Ahasuerus and basically explain to him what's going on and try and stop it from happening. So she did, but she was very unsure because she didn't want to get killed herself by her husband, because he hadn't actually invited her in. She's just going to go up and speak to him, and obviously you kind of got to be invited in, not just go and turn up sort of thing. Towards the in chapter 5 then, Esther prepares a banquet for the king and for Haman to kind of expose what's going on. So she does it over 2 days, the banquet. So this is covering the first day of the banquet, not the second. So this is just covering the first. So she plans the first day, she gets them drunk, gets them to eat loads of food and everything, and a bit merry. But the king is obviously saying to her, like, what do you want? I will give it to you. Just say what you want and I'll give it to you. But she's a bit unsure, obviously. At this point, Haman plans to have Mordecai hung. Him and his family, have obviously got this all plotted to do so. And at the end, they have like a gallows made for Mordecai to be hung on. In chapter 6, the king finds out that Mordecai has been discovered the plot. That plot that was mentioned in chapter 2. He just, he discovers that and honours him, because he's like really grateful that he has basically just saved him. Basically, he's been saved. But at the end of chapter 6, Esther now wants to reveal, now going to be revealing the plot that is just taking place to have Mordecai hung and all the Jewish people killed. So in chapter 7, at the first half of chapter 7, she has a second banquet. And that banquet obviously takes place. Haman and King Ahasuerus gets drunk, merry, what have you. She then obviously said, the king's now saying, what is it? What is it that you want to tell me? You can tell me, just tell me and it will be done. Whatever has been said will be dealt with. Whatever's the problem, it'll be sorted, sort of thing. It's all that sort of thing, that issue of what's going on, that type of thing. So she obviously explains to him what's happened, and obviously at this point, King Ahasuerus is like really cross that somebody would do that. Somebody would want to kill people like that. So King Ahasuerus is saying at the end of this section, like, who is it and who are they? So she exposes Haman, and Haman then obviously gets hung on the gallows, the very same gallows that he has set up for Mordecai. And he's like, why would Mordecai do it? But Mordecai is now going to be hung for all his crime, for his crimes of wanting to kill innocent Jewish people. So in chapter 8, which we just covered, it talks about the fact that Esther is now wanting this plot, the plot to have all these Jewish people killed, to be revoked. And King Ahasuerus does that. He's like, yep, that's fine, we can get that sorted. So he does. So it gets like a letter sent out to everybody, every area within the king's land, the king's kingdom, with all the Jewish people that are within that kingdom. A letter gets sent out, and it gets sealed with the signet ring. So the signet ring gets put into like a wax type material, and it seals it. As soon as you have that, that's a done thing. That's done. That is the king's way of saying that's it. It's like, that is the king's signature. Everybody knows once the king's signet ring is sealed in that letter, that decree, that is done by the king. Even if it's not written by the king, because I've obviously established it's not written by the king, but the king's said yes, it can be written. So we know that. But because the king has given his signet ring as a seal of approval, seal to say yes, that is it, that's when that letter is sealed, and it's then sent out to everybody on the fastest horses known in the kingdom. The fastest horses will do it. So they do. So all those horses go out their way, the letter gets sent out, gets put into public places in languages for everybody to read, to understand. And then at the end, Mordecai is presented to people in royal robes, because Esther explains who he is, explains that he is her cousin, explains everything, explains the whole situation involving him. And the king's fine with it. The king's like, yeah, that's fine. I think he would have been more happier if he was told that from the start, but he was fine with it. He was happy and was content with that. And he wanted to showcase Mordecai, because Mordecai is the queen's family member. So the king's happy with him. And everybody is like so excited and so, like, shouting with happiness and rejoice, so joyful at Mordecai and that he's been saved. So that is the story so far. Tomorrow we will be doing chapter 9, and then obviously that's Wednesday, and then on Thursday we'll be doing chapter 10. So we are coming very close to the end of the book of Esther. So I am going to write in the day and the date. So I'm going to do it up here. So it's day 8, and it's the 13th of the 1st, 25, and it's a Tuesday today. So thank you for watching. Please like my content, please subscribe to my channel, and please turn on the notification bell so you get notified of content like this that gets uploaded to the channel. Thank you and goodbye.